All right, we're here with Coach Bobby Lamb for the SAC Digital Media Day. Excited to talk some Anderson football. Thanks for taking some time today, Coach.
Yeah, it's great. Great to be here.
So you got hired almost 3 years ago to the day, right? In July, and been building up until this moment. You got guys starting to move in, getting ready to open up your first camp. Take us through that 3 year, the slow build here, and how excited are you to get this thing rolling?
Yeah, holy cow! It's been a wild ride. Obviously, I got hired 3 years ago, and I spent the first 6 months by myself. Didn't have any coaches, and during that time, we obviously helped raise money. But biggest thing I did was build relationships within the community and within our university here. And then obviously we had to plan for facilities, and so it's been a busy time since I've been here. And then I was able to phase in two coaches 6 months later, and then the rest of my staff 6 months after that. So we've all been together and haven't lost any coaches yet, which is great. So we formed a pretty good bond. We went through a practice year this past year, which we all made it through that okay, and now we're ready to play some ball. So.
Not your first time either. You're kind of an experienced coach when it comes to starting programs, right? You did it at Mercer. They were without a program for 70 years, and you built that one. What's the intrigue and what draws you to kind of starting or rebuilding a program?
Well, I'll be honest with you. The Mercer gig was my first time ever doing it, but yeah, I went down to Macon, Georgia. My home state was obviously in Georgia. It was Georgia, so obviously the ability to go back home to my home state and start something from scratch was pretty intriguing. I really like the planning part of it. You really, you get down to the nuts and bolts of what you need to play football, what you need to participate in the game, and then you kind of put your thumbprint on everything. So that was kind of neat. And then when this opportunity came open here in Anderson, South Carolina, which my wife's from Greenville, my mom and dad are from Commerce, Georgia. So God kind of placed me right here, right in the middle of my parents and my mother-in-law, and so we're happy to be here. And boy, the response here in Anderson has been great.
So you mentioned last year was a practice year. You got to play a spring game as your first real game. What's the environment like, and how excited are you to have an actual opponent now to gear up for?
Yeah, well, we actually had our fall black and gold game, and so it was it was homecoming here on our campus, in which obviously homecoming now will obviously be on the football weekends, which is great. We had 6,000 people show up for that game, and I was really overwhelmed by what happened there that day. And then this past spring, we ended up having a spring game, and we had about 3,500 folks there. So the anticipation level is pretty high. And I know everywhere I go in town, everywhere I go around campus, everybody can't wait to start football. And everybody just thinks you just show up and play, right? But there's been a lot of work put in, starting with our administration. Evans Whitaker was the one that decided to start football, our president. And then Bert Epting's been a soldier by my side the entire way, doing everything we needed to do to get this thing up and running. And then our coaching staff and our players, our athletic administration. It takes a lot of people to get it started, but I tell you, once September 7th gets here, we'll all take a deep sigh of relief, and then we'll be able to play football, which is what we want to do.
September 7th, you got St. Andrews. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, it's kind of a blank slate, right? But tell us about some of the guys that might be standing out, or some guys that might be impact players for Anderson.
Yeah, well, it starts at the quarterback position. Obviously, any team you have needs to have a really good quarterback. So we're still in a series of battles on offense and defense. So we're really going to use our preseason camp to obviously decide who's going to start the game. So comes to mind coming out of spring practice, a guy named Tyler Wesley, who started every game last year at Presbyterian College, transferred over, would won the starting nod coming out of spring. But he was kind of 1A, and 1B was Riley Willis, who we signed out of Orlando, Florida. And so he's a true freshman. He'll be a redshirt freshman this year. And then we were able to obtain Colson Brown from North Augusta High School. He went to Georgia Tech and walked on last year. And then Rob Sanders is from Riverside High School. So we got 4 guys there that'll kind of battle for that position. And so that's kind of where it starts. And then our tailback spot, Bryson James, was a really good pickup for us. He was in Clinton High School. He was one of the top 5 finalists for Mr. Football in the state of South Carolina. And he's really come in here, and we've been impressed with him. But overall, we signed 91 freshmen in year 1. We added 26 newcomers, freshmen this past year. And then the biggest advantage we have is a transfer portal. We've averaged, we had 22 transfers join our program. So we've added age and we've added experience, which is really good, and we're excited about that. So Jalon Warthen is a receiver from Stetson that we feel like will be a really good player. Kenny Brown was one of the true freshmen we had that really stepped up at the wide receiver spot. Dylan Manders, a tight end from over in Athens, Georgia, are some of the guys on the offensive end. So we got some guys, but we still got a lot of battles going on that really got to step up and elevate themselves and separate themselves from the pack.
So you talked about last year being a practice year. This year is your first fall camp, essentially going into games. How much different will that be? Will that look from maybe a year ago with doing your practices to now it's camp, it's time to gear up for games?
Oh, it's when you look at our calendar, counting the days off, we've got 23 practices before the first game. So there's got to be a sense of urgency that we didn't have in the fall. In the fall, we could take our time. We could repeat plays if we needed to. We could repeat practices if we needed to. So there was not a sense of urgency because we didn't have anywhere to be. So now we got somewhere to be, and it's 1:00 on Saturday afternoon in our stadium. And so the sense of urgency will really pick up in our practices, and that's the thing we're going to talk to our players about today.
So you start with a couple home games, well, really 3. First 2 are non-conference with St. Andrews, LaGrange, and then you have Limestone to open up conference play. What advantage of that for a new program is it to have 3 straight at home?
Well, I tell people all the time, the good news is there's good news and bad news. The good news is we're eligible to win the SAC championship. The bad news is we've got to play in the SAC, so right into the middle of it with all these freshmen we have on our team. So I think it's important the way the schedule just mapped out. We were able to have 2 non-conference games at home, and then the third kind of fell in our lap to being a home game. Obviously, St. Andrews and then LaGrange, we don't know a whole lot about both of those programs, but we'll host both those here. And then, of course, the third game is Limestone, who has been in the playoffs the last 2 years. And so we'll get a pretty stiff test there in game 3 is to start our SAC season. So we're excited about the SAC. I know the SAC is one of the premier Division II conferences. I've always kept up with it, being at Furman and being at Mercer. You always keep up with who's doing what. And so a lot of great coaches in our league. A lot of them are new coaches now, but I can guarantee you this: every game, as you well know, is competitive in the SAC conference.
So going into year 1 here, I guess what are some realistic expectations? What are if you look back on this 2024 season, what do you think you hope to accomplish, and what are your goals?
Well, obviously, when you start a program from scratch, our number one goal is to win the SAC championship, and we want to be competitive and fight for that thing in year 1. Basically, we talked to our players about our core values, and our core values are the Trojan triangle. They're love to the baseline of our triangle, serve is the left side of our triangle, and then compete is the third part of our triangle. So love, serve, and compete. So we want to take that third side and be competitive every single Saturday that we show up. And we can be competitive and do the things that we need to do, and then at the end of the year, you add them up and see where you are. So it's new for me because we're going into the SAC. I'm coaching against different coaches. We're playing against different schemes, different teams. So I don't have a good answer, but I know this: we're going to show up every Saturday and be competitive, and then we'll see what happens at the end.
We'll finish up on this. You're obviously a veteran coach, over 100 wins at the Division I level. But maybe you can't even think of this one yet. But what's that feeling going to be like September 7th? You've worked so hard, so long to get to this point, kind of taking that field in front of a home crowd. You built this program. What do you think that'll be like?
Well, for me, I've already done it once at Mercer, and I can tell you that my other coaches don't really know this because they haven't done it. But for me, it was one of the most rewarding nights of my career. Now at Mercer, we kicked a field goal on the last play of the game to beat Reinhardt in a shootout. So hopefully it's not like that. But yeah, it is a rewarding night from a standpoint of all the Trojan fans coming back to campus, all the alumni. Let's just face it, football brings people together, and it'll invigorate our alumni to come back and hopefully give back to the program. It will help build relationships within our community. I know our community is fired up. Everybody says, well, y'all are so close to Clemson. I said, I understand that. Clemson is Clemson and Anderson is Anderson. We've got our own little niche, and I really believe we'll have our own fan following here. And that's the great thing about the SAC. You can have a great fan following, go to away games. But back to that night, I really think that that day will all culminate of all the hard work that's been put in, and then we can finally, like I said, take a deep breath and let's play football and let's kick it off and let's work on the things we've been working on for so long. But from my standpoint, it's one of the most rewarding nights or one more rewarding days of the year because of all the hard work's been going on for the last 3 years.
Well, there you go. Head coach Bobby Lamb took some time today to talk Anderson football. Really wish you all the best of luck in year one, and good luck with the Trojan season here.
All right, Jeremy. Thanks. Go Trojans.